Hello and welcome to another Armageddon MUD video. One of the things the thing that I wanted to talk about today is something that I was discussing with an Armageddon staff member this morning, which is the notion of avatars. And I'm using the word avatar to mean a character run by a staff member. And avatars, I think, staff avatars, are a question that plague every MUD, because you don't want, or at least with us, we try to focus on fairness. And one of my personal bugbears is, things that are unfair to the players. And that's one of the things that I try to prevent from happening. And avatars, I think, are a big source of, or big potential source of unfairness. And so I'll talk a little bit about the way avatars work on Armageddon. When new staff come on, that's usually one of their first questions is, do we still get to play? And I think it would be one of the surest ways to discourage people from coming on staff would be to say, no, you can't play. And we also want staff to play because there is a unique perspective from the player side of things. I can build a fabulous city, but I'm not really going to have a good sense of, its boundaries, its advantages, its disadvantages until I've played there, until my characters actually run around inside it. And I think that's really important. I think that avatars are often the source of a lot of good changes for the MUD, where staff members are playing and they notice a problem and they see that it's fixed. And that we really do want staff to be banging on the code. We really do want staff to be playing. That said, there is an obvious conflict of interest when you have a staff member running an avatar, and it's very important, I think, that we minimize that wherever possible. So here's some of the things that we've done. One is that we do not allow people to run avatars in clans that they are involved with. And I think that's a big help. And, in some ways, having an avatar in their clan is very handy because you can drive plot lines and nudge them along. And the problem is that there's a huge temptation then to have the storyline move in a way that advantages the character, which is totally understandable because, you're emotionally invested in this character, you love it, you think about it, depending on how deeply immersed you get in the game. So it's a big temptation, and we would rather just sort of remove that entirely from people's, totally remove it for people. Now, and that is something that applies to storytellers through overlords, is that you just don't run a character in a clan that you're involved with. It would be a bad idea. So what else? We say to people they cannot build custom items for their characters. And I was the person who came up with that, and one of the reasons I came up with that is because that's a temptation that I'm well aware of. I have done that. I did that with a character, and one of the things that I realized about it is that that's a dead giveaway that's a staff avatar. And players, and I speak to all of you, unfortunately, you guys play differently when you know there's a staff member in the room. Many of you play differently when there's a staff member in the room. In fact, it's sometimes kind of funny to see somebody out in the desert spam crafting, and then you drop an echo by them, and suddenly they're emoting up a storm. So, but I digress. So no custom items. And we also create a differentiation between sort of regular avatars and what we call resource avatars. And a resource avatar is intended to act as a resource for the players. It is, for example, the scribe who's going to drop certain clues to a player. It is the Templar who's going to send people out on a quest. It is intended to assist in play, and its primary motivation is to assist the players. Now, as opposed to that, you have regular staff avatars, and those are characters that people play for their own enjoyment. Resource avatars can be tweaked. I don't mind that, because that tweaking benefits the players. Non-resource avatars cannot be tweaked. They have to go through the regular progression. So that's one way we try to avoid the conflict of interest. And that said, you know, one of the problems that we've experienced on occasion, and this is rare, and I'm not trying to point fingers at anyone, but on occasion we get people involved with the code running a character. And I have really mixed feelings about that, because while I think it's really good for someone to be putting the code to a really solid test, somebody who knows how it works and somebody who's willing to then make the changes that are necessary, I think that's a terrific thing. When I see things being coded, though, sometimes it seems as though it's intended for the person's character's benefit, and that I don't think is very cool, and you know, so it's a balancing act. I want to have somebody work on the code, but I want things to be fair, so I'm trying to balance things out. And I'm not saying, you know, I'm not saying that this is currently happening, that's because it's not. But it has popped up in the past, and I think it's a real problem. And one of the reasons I think it's a problem is, here's several reasons. One is that when that person makes code changes, they are the best equipped to use those code changes. They know more about them than the players. The players have to kind of figure them out. This is the person who's written the help file, usually on the skill. And it's, you know, again, these are also people who know the code backwards and forwards, and they can play in a way that is more efficient. And I'm not saying that there's not players who play efficiently, because I know there are people out there who know how to game the system very carefully. And you know who you are. But I think it is an advantage for the avatar, and I think it's very important that people who are in a situation like that be very aware of that, and absolutely scrupulously avoid the appearance of conflict of interest. Avatars, you know, the staff have an advantage. It's just a given. Staff get to read the boards, staff, you know, see who's where, and we try to put some guidelines in place. We don't allow storytellers to have their immortal character and their avatar on at the same time. You can only have one at a time. We tell people not to monitor characters with whom their avatar is involved. But at the same time, I think it's a real recipe for disaster if staff members come on and say, I want to retain some of the mystery for myself, so I'm going to avoid certain sections of the game. That is an approach that just doesn't work. I've seen a number of people try this, and it has always been disastrous. So, in short, have I answered every question that I wanted to about avatars? I'm not sure that I have, but I hope that that clarifies what happens when a staff member creates a character and how they are treated. And I hope that it's a little reassuring that we are trying to make sure that things are fair. And sometimes we are succeeding in that, and that's a cool thing, and we do our best. So, I have now rambled on and wasted almost 9 minutes of your time, so I will end here. Thank you, and have a good time playing.